Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to see so many of you. There are more than 100 people watching currently. So I hope you will have a good time and you will not be disappointed by this session. I will be talking about building concept maps in MaxQDA, and I will be showing you the MaxMaps features today. Let's just wait for one more minute and we can start right now. All right. So very warm welcome. My name is Tamara Pataki, and I am a software expert, and I'm an expert for MaxQDA at Verbi Software. And my role here at the company is to show people who are interested in how to work with MaxQDA, and I also give training into the different MaxQDA features. And today I have prepared a presentation to you about building concept maps focusing on the MaxMaps feature. And I will talk for about, as Hannah had already posted in the chat, I will talk for about 30 minutes. And after that, we will have 15 minutes time to talk about any questions you might have. And the plan what I have for today is to show you how to build your own maps from scratch and how to work with pre-built templates in MaxMaps. And we will also talk about how to modify visualizations by using the MaxMaps feature. So without further ado, let's get started. You can already see my screen, which I have shared with you. And here is the MaxQDA interface. And we will be working with MaxMaps now, which you can find under the tab Visual Tools. And why would you use this feature? What can it do for you? So MaxMaps allows you to build concept maps and use that for different purposes in your research process. This is of course a great feature to discover your data. You can import project elements and visualize their connections in MaxQDA. So that is very helpful to have just a different view on your data to discover how different project elements are linked. I can see that someone wrote they have difficulties hearing me. Can I get a short feedback if everybody can hear me all right? We have tested the sound, so it should be all right. Yes, so there might be most people can hear me all right, so there might be a configuration issue on your side. All right, so I will just keep on going if so many people can hear us. That is lovely. Thank you so much for the feedback. So as I have told you, you can use MaxMaps to discover connections between your data, to look at how project elements link together. And this can also help you to find emerging themes, to see and to use that to develop your own concepts and theories based on these connections that you can discover in MaxMaps. And of course, you can also use this feature to visualize concepts or relationships. So you can not only use that exploratively, but also to present your analysis, maybe for a figure in the paper what you are writing, or for a presentation what you are preparing. So MaxMaps have multiple purposes here. You can work with different types of maps. You can work with free maps that you can build from scratch yourself, or you can work with models that are predefined in MaxQDA. Let me just make it a bit bigger for you. Here it is. So free maps are the ones what you can also see here. What I'm showing you, this is something that I just created here in MaxMaps, and these elements I have created from scratch, and they are not created to any point in my to any element in my project. But you can also work with model templates, or you can also work with connections with project elements. I will show you how to build that in a second. You can also you can import many MaxQDA. You can import many MaxQDA elements. So you can either work with elements that you have created here in MaxMaps, or you can work with your existing project elements. You can create maps based on your documents, your document groups, document sets, your memos. You can also import coded segments or codes and subcodes. So I have created all of this already in MaxQDA. You also in MaxMaps, you can also find an overview of all elements and everything what I am telling you in the handout, which Hannah posted before in the chat. So if you would like to also see these maps, or if you would like to see what you can import, you can find a list in the handout as well. So let me show you how the MaxMap interface looks like. We have our menu ribbon here in the top that is a bit similar to the MaxQDA menu ribbon, and here under Start we can find a feature that allows us to create maps. Here we can either create a new map. This is the map, but that we can also build from scratch. That gives us a blank new map, or we can work with pre-made models. We can either work with document models or with code models. We also have the features here to link different elements between each other. And we can also then see how we can move elements, or how we can position them relating to each other. And we also have the option here to save our maps, either send it to a QTT worksheet to work with it over there, where we can also take notes on it and put it into relationship with other visualizations or with other maps that we created. Or we can also take a screenshot or export an image of what we have created. Under the Insert tab, you can find the different elements that you can work with. And you can also find here, if you select an element in the menu ribbon, you can also find a number of formatting options. Okay, so now I will show you how you can create free maps. And for that, I will show you an example first of a map what I created. And you can use this map. You can use free maps for a lot of reasons. I have used it to create a sketch of my research design, but I have used for the work-life balance project. So this is just an example of how the end result can look like. All right, let's now go and create a map from scratch together. For that, I will select the option New Map and create a new map with you. Let us create a case model for the interview that we have recorded with our interview partner Tan. We have different options to start importing. We could also drag and drop directly from our MaxQDA project. For that, I will minimize my window. And here I could select the elements what I would like to import directly from my project. So let us first take the interview with Tan. This is the document. This will be the center of our case. And we are, of course, also interested in the notes what we took. And here in the memo of this interview, we already have some informations. We have created a description of how this interview took place, and we also have a document summary. By drag and dropping, we could also insert this memo here to our map. If I right click on this element, I also have the option to insert the entire text of my memo as a label, so that I can read this contextual information right now. I can also make this bigger or smaller in order to make it more visible. So I have 3 formatting options here. Let's see what else is important for us. We are also, of course, very interested in the codes. So, what are the teams? What Tan was talking about, and we could either import it by drag and dropping, what we've just done before, or we could also import by right-clicking on the document. And if we say import codes, then we can import the codes that are applied in these documents, and then we could work with those specific categories, with those specific themes that also occur in this interview with Tan. So let's just use that. And as you can see, MuxQDA also already indicated these connections for us. So, and this is where the explorative feature of the MAXMaps module comes into play as well, what I mentioned to you at the beginning. So it's not just about me being able to work with different elements, what I think that are relating to this, but here I can also refer back to my empirical data and ask MaxQDA to import those exact codes, those exact themes that also occur in this interview. Okay, so we could also work with free objects. I will also show you how we can add that in a second to our map, but let's just make this a little bit bigger so that we can also see how we can organize that a bit better to make this more visually appealing as well. So I have the option here to also automatically change these arrangements. So let's say I would like to get a little bit of more space and align these codes differently. Let me just align them here on the bottom so that I can work with other information with my memo here. I would also like to add some categorization of my codes to just add additional explanation. And for that, I would like to now use the free elements, and we could use these to create forms to group certain information together. So let's say here I would like to just illustrate that these codes where Tan is talking about her work-life separation, childcare, and her typical workday belong to the same category of home life. Then I could just group these together by adding an element. I could also change the layers here. So in MaxMaps, you have multiple layers of elements, and each new elements are always automatically added in the top layer. So if I would like to now bring this box to the back, I could do that by simply sending it to the very back, and then now my codes will become visible again. I can adjust it, I can move that a little bit around, and let's say here we just said that these are the categories where she's talking about home life. So let's just add that information as well as a label of our category here. So this would be one of the example of how to work with these additional forms, but you can also add some other forms, some arrows, some indicating linkages here. But if you would like to link elements in a way that they can also be that their relationship is also indicated not only visually, but they are also connected here in the MaxMaps, you should use here this link button. So here we could do that to link the memo, for example, to this interview, and then we can also move it around and the connection will stay. So this is not just a visual element, but these two elements are now also linked. So Tan's document and the memo which I just added. We could also add some more contextual information. I also took a picture while I was interviewing Tan, and I could also add that by adding a new element. I took a picture of her home office, let's say. I could also add this image here directly on my map. And then we could say that this is the basis of our case map. All right, so this is just to show you how you can work with free maps. Of course, I am very sure that you can create much more visually appealing and interesting representations of your project. But let me quickly move on and also show you how you can work with models that are included in MAXMaps. And for that, we will go back to the Start tab, and I will show you how you can work with document models and code models. And I have in the handout included a full list of what these different models are intended to do. So MaxQDA comes with a long list of pre-configured model templates that can help you create these visualizations. You can work with single case models for coded segments, summaries, paraphrases, focus group speakers, or code hierarchies. And again, in the handout, there is a in the handout, there is a full explanation of why and how you would want to use these models for. You can also work with two cases models to compare, for example, different documents between different documents. So in this case, for example, different interviews between each other. And I will quickly show you how that works. So if I select the two cases model here, MaxQDA will also prompt me and let me know what I should do here. So it explains me I should drag two documents groups or document sets here from my document system, and it also handily displays the document system here for me. So let's just compare here two of our interview partners, Matteo and Tan, between each other. So here we have our interview partner Matteo, and here we have our interview partner Tan. And if I drag and drop them, then as you can see, MaxQDA will automatically create this map for me. I will say I would like to use this model here. And then it automatically added all the codes what these documents have in common, and all the codes which either one or the other, which was applied in either only one or the other document. And there are a couple of interesting things here. So first of all, we can see little numbers here in these connections. And this allows you to see how often this code was applied in the document. So we can see there are two coded segments where Matteo is talking about domestic work. And as you can see, the size of these code labels are also different. So here he only talks about he only talks more once about scheduling, about free time and budgeting, but he talks two times about domestic works. So accordingly, domestic work is also appearing bigger here in this visual representation. And if you would like to add further elements on this map, you can also do so. So the model was also to create, and using this template allowed you to create this representation. But if you would like to here also, let's say, add the text of the memos as a label, you could also do that. So we could do that for both of our interview partners to also see under what circumstances these interviews took place. We could also import these coded segments. Sorry, I just went to the overview of the coded segments, but I could also say I would like to see what are these two segments, what Matteo is telling me about domestic work. I could also do that. And again, this is where the explorative, where the explorative feature of MAXMaps comes into play. So I could also use that to visually go and discover new themes and read my coded segments directly here in MAXMaps. So this is something what I could do. I could also import not only these coded segments, but I could also say I would like to see what summaries I already took, or I could also import codes that be co-occurring with this one, so that I can go and discover even deeper what are the co-occurring themes here in these interviews. So this is an example for the two cases model, and I would also like to show you an example for a code model. And here again, we have a number of different templates that you can choose from, and you will find an explanation of what each and every of these templates are for in the handout which I provided. But I would like to only show you one of them, namely the hierarchical code and subcodes model here, which allows you to see a representation, a hierarchical representation of your higher level and subcodes. And I would like to show you here how it works with the example of our survey questions. So again, here MaxQDA just told me what to do here, and I dragged and dropped one of my codes which I wanted to explore even further, and then MaxQDA automatically added a model of how this code relates to its subcodes, and it added two levels of subcodes of the second and the third level here. And again, I can move this around. I can add my elements if I would like to. If I would like to group this further, I could add new labels, I could add more text, and I could also do the same thing which I did before by import segments which were coded with this particular code. I will not do that right now because this is a survey and we would have big amount of responses here, but I think you get the idea of how this model works. All right. So this is what you can do with the model templates. And let me just show you one last thing before we move on to the visualizations. And I wanted to show you that MaxMaps is also automatically linked. It is connected to the project elements of your MaxQDA project in the background. And for that, let me just go back a little bit to my, why can't I navigate you here? I lost my map for a second. I'm sorry about that. Let me just, MaxQDA is being shy because of the presentation, but here it is. This is what I wanted to show you. And I could also use that to navigate through my project. And if I double click on one of these elements, so let's say I clicked on Riley, then MaxQDA will also navigate me to that document here in the background. So here Riley is now open, or I could also go to settings. So if you are, that's a particularly useful feature. If you are working with a multi-screen setup, you could have MaxMaps opened on one of your screens and your project on the background, and then you can always refer back to the empirical data. That is one of the key features of MaxQDA, that you are always just a hand away from your empirical data set, and every time when you would like to see segments in their context, when you would like to see, well, what else is this interview partner talking about? How exactly is this quote appear? MaxQDA never takes you very far away from the context of your quotes and from the context of your project, so that you can always refer back to your data. Okay, So let me just close that for a second. And I wanted to show you a third important feature in MAXMaps, namely how you can import visualizations that you have created using other tools, and how you can then edit them in MAXMaps. And for that, I will show you that with code maps, with the document map, and with creative coding. And let me just prepare first a code map to show you how that works. And you can find the code map and document map features here under the visual tools. And let me create a code map. A code map allows you to see and analyze the relationships between your codes. And code maps are created automatically as well, based on the criteria what you select here in this dialog window. So let's see, we would like to see how our interview codes of education, friends and family, let's say childcare, typical workday, and the amount of hours our respondents were working, their home office, and their uh, let's say what they told us about flexibility as well, how these topics relate to each other. So here we could look for how our interview partners thematize these topics. Were these topics co-occurring? Were they mentioning them? Were they mentioning them at the same time? And for our analysis, we could choose different units here. We could see if these codes intersect in our document, if they are what their proximity is in the same document, so in the same interviews, or if they co-occur in the same document. I will stay with the proximity of these codes. And if I hit OK, MaxQDA will create me this map, which allows me to see how these topics can be clustered together. So we can see that there is more relation between, that there is a relationship between our interview partners' education, what they told us about friends and family, and the amount of hours what they work. And these codes are also colored here, not according to their color in the code system, but according to how they can be clustered. And this map is automatically calculated and it's fixed, so we can't move that around, but we can modify that in MaxMaps. So I will save it as a map, and we will see, we will come back to that later on, how we can then move that around. But before that, let me just show you another example, that of the document map as well. And here we will also see clusters of our project elements. But here, instead of seeing how different themes in our interviews can be clustered, we will see how our different interview partners can be clustered, so that we can also group them together as different cases. For that, I will now select my interview partners here. I will also select some codes as the criteria uh, based on which I would like to compare them. So let me just select their work-life balance and their work situation codes, as well as what they told us about their wishes for the future. And I also have the option to select some variables. So here in this case, to select some demographic information based on which I would like them to be clustered. And if I do so, you can see that MaxQDA now created a visual representation of what groups can be created among my interview partners, and it identified 3 groups of my cases according to these 3 colors, which were also applied here. So we can see that these groups are also a bit uneven, I will save that in maps as well, so we can also see how we can apply, how we can add elements and move that around a little bit, so that just to make this representation a bit nicer for our publication as well. Let me just close that and show you the third sort of information that you can, the third tool which you can import from, and that is the creative coding tool. And the creative coding tool is, the idea behind that is that you can visually organize your coding. And here the idea would be to play a little bit around your code system and to see what other organizations of your code system would be possible, or what would make sense for your project. And I will show you that here briefly with the example of our work-life balance code. So these are our work-life balance topics, and we have multiple subcodes here. But let's say I would like to now think about what other ways these codes could be grouped together, and maybe I would like to work with multiple layers of subcodes. So what I could do here, if I start organizing my codes here, I could add a new code, which could be a new subcode here. So I could, let's say, well, I have multiple codes which talk about relationships. So I have people telling me about their friends and family and about childcare. This would be something that talk to relationships. I could add these, and then a new code appears here. And I could also define new links, so make this a new subcode. And I could then also say, well, friends and family should be a subcode of my new relationship codes, and childcare as well. If I do that, the relationship between work-life balance, childcare, and family disappeared, because one code can only be the subcode of one other. It cannot be a subcode of multiple parent codes. So one code can only have one parent at a time. So let's say this is one subcode we created. We could also make different modifications. And the idea behind this tool is that you could then apply these modifications for your entire code system. So you could now also say, well, this is the new code system what I would like to add. But if you are unsure about that, you could also just save it as a map before applying this modification. And if you close this tool, MaxQDA will ask you if you would like to apply this structure to your code system. I will say no. And if I do that, it will be just saved regularly in MaxMaps. So I will just say no and say I would like to continue. And now we close that tool. And if we go back to MaxMaps, what we closed beforehand, we will see that these elements which I just created, so will appear here. So I have my document here, document map here, I have my code map here, and I have my creative coding here. And now I have this preliminary version of my code system, which I could use to further think about that, which I could then also add different elements to and move around. And I have the same for the document map and the code map as well. And the big advantage is that here I can also move these elements around, which I couldn't do in the original features, because there the idea is that the mathematical positioning of these elements stay put, so that we are not changing that, because that is automatically calculated. But here, if I would like to use these representations for my paper, then I could also do that. And as you can see here, sometimes these elements also overlap, so I could fiddle it around a little bit so that I just have a much better and nicer representation. Here I could also move my cases together And I could then again add different grouping elements. I could add arrows. I could add boxes. I will not show that to you because I already at the end of my session. And of course, the MAXMaps, as you could see, is a very powerful feature with a lot of different configurations and a lot of ways to build beautiful representations here. And I'm sure that you can make even prettier concept maps as I have done before, but I hope that this gave you a very good idea and an overview of what this tool is capable for. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I will now move to the Q&A section to see what questions you posed me, and I hope that I can provide a good answer to you. So let me just think about what's the best way to look at these questions. Hannah was already answering a lot of them. So the first question I can see here is the export function compatible with Adobe Illustrator vector graphics? So indeed, when you are exporting MAXMaps, and that is not the feature I was looking for. I was looking for the export map feature. And here you could also select that you would like to work with the scalable vector file. And if you do that, you will have a vector graphic that you can use in other applications as well. So yes, you can export MaxQDA as MaxMap as a vector graphic. Then we have I might go from the button, I think, because I have new questions on the top. So is it possible to specify the type of link, for example, causation, if then and or relationship? So Tanya wants me to know if we could classify the way the type of relationships. So you have different, when you are using the link feature, you are just linking two elements so that you can graphically move them together here. But if you are working with these different arrows, you can indeed represent different relationships. If it's a one, if it's a one directional or two directional relationship, so you could use a legend to also represent that. This is a graphical representation. Of course, you can do that. Of course, you can define them any way you would like to. So yes, I would suggest you to work with these arrows to represent different type of relationships and maybe include a legend as well. Veronica asked me to re-add the photo, so see how that works. If you go under Insert to New Image, you can load images directly from your computer. Just select the image what you would like to work with, and this will then appear here in your map. You can then also make it bigger, you can make it smaller, and move that around. You can find the handout in the chat. How to make some codes of the code. Oh, you can work with emoticons. Victoria is asking me about the emojis. The emojis were added because I was working with emoticons that you can find here in your document browser under emoticons. So you can create codes directly as emoticons, and then you can rename that. So those were added as emojis because they were emoticons here in my code system as well. Then Grace is asking, can you also use an example of mapping from meeting minutes and reports? I don't have an example prepared for that, but of course, analog to what I just showed you, you could also work with and the different document types. I just had interviews in this specific data set, but of course you could also work with other data types that you imported into your project. Cesar is asking if we create maps of already added documents and created codes. Yes, I would suggest you to do so. So again, you could work with free elements as well, but I would suggest you that you start mapping after you had done the initial coding as well. But strictly speaking, you can create a map without having any elements in MaxQDA, but I wouldn't recommend that because I think the whole sense of working with these concept maps is being able to represent relationships that occur in your data that you have already analyzed and already started analyzing by, for example, coding that. All right. Then Birgit is asking me about the symbol for the codes, and I think that was the same question regarding emoticons as well. If it's not, then please ask me again, and then I can start figuring that out. Then Bill is asking me, and it's great to see you here, Bill. And he is asking me, so he's saying it seems MaxMaps 101 is you must be selective about the codes or objects you add. Rarely do you add a top level element with hundreds of children. So yes, I would agree on that. I would agree with that, Bill. So the idea of these concept maps in MaxMaps is that you would like to create a visual representation that also helps you either to present or to discover your data. And I think that if you would like to analyze a code with hundreds of subcodes or a code with hundreds of coded segments, then a tabular representation, which you can find in the overview of coded segments, might make a lot of sense for you to browse through that than to have them all in a concept map. So I would also say, yes, only add elements that are practical to look at as well, but you can always use the undo button. So if you change your mind, if it doesn't look okay, you can always just create a new map or use the undo buttons to add a element or to add it more selectively. But yes, it makes sense to work with smaller data sets here, or with like elements that have smaller sub-elements. But yes, of course, if you have a survey which has hundreds of respondents, but you have 5 or 6 themes but you would like to explore, you could use that. You could use MaxMaps for that wonderfully as well. All right. Another question we have is, how can I import paraphrases and summaries into maps and connect them with different types of codes? And let me think which of my codes have some summaries so that I can. So we have a single case model of our respondent Riley, and I think that, it just jumps around a little bit. So here is my document Riley, and if I'm not mistaken, then I have created some paraphrases. Yes, I did. Of course, it doesn't really look right. Let me just make it a bit. Let's just create a new map. Add Riley. And so here I could now not only import codes, but I could, and this again only works if I have some paraphrases. So I have written paraphrases before. Then I could also import paraphrases that are written in this document of Riley's. And then I can rearrange them in the same way as as we've seen that before with our codes. And here, instead of seeing codes or coded segments, now I can see the paraphrases that I created in Riley's document. So you can add them the same way as you added codes, and the same applies to summaries of codes as well. I believe I have some summaries for my typical Workday code. And here, if I import summaries, then I can also see what summaries I have created for my typical Workday code. So here I have created this in the in this summary section, in the summary feature that you can find under analysis. Here you can find the summary grid, and this is where I have written it. I summarized what each of my respondents told me about typical workday. And here you can see MAXMaps imported that in the same way as it did with paraphrases or coded segment. And here we can see this is my summary of what Matteo is saying about typical workday, Amadi, Tatiana, and all my other interview partners. So this is how we do that. And Helena is asking us about creative coding. You can see let me go through that. So Helena is asking that, as I said, you can save the creative coding map into MAXMaps without applying it to the data. And she's wondering if the changes what she makes in MAXMaps can then be applied directly in the data. So if she moves it around here in MAXMaps, if it can retroactively be applied um, on the code system. And no, that is unfortunately not the case. So if you are modifying relationships between codes here in the in MAXMaps, that will not be applied to your data in the same way as it was before in the creative coding tool. So that is not possible as far as I know. The next question is, in the first map where appears numbers, is it possible to add the names? I am not sure what this question is referring to. Would you mind rephrasing that? So you can rename elements in MaxQDA, in MaxMaps. You can rename map elements. If this is what you are asking me, I'm not sure. Sorry about that. Then the question about the recording. Then there is a question about going through the options of the code distribution model, and I wouldn't do that. I'm sorry, Maya, but I think we are already over time. But why don't you write me separately a chat in the chat afterwards, and then we can chat about it a little bit. But I don't want to drag this session too long. Then Candace is asking if it could be used to designing a theory of change or logical models for project evaluations. Yes, of course, you can do that for this as well. Then, so you could represent any objects, any elements, and these also do not necessarily have to be objects in your MaxQDA project. So you can use it for creating different concept maps as well. And then Cindy is asking me about geolinks. So here you could add a external link or a geolocation, for example, of where you recorded an interview. Then Utam is asking me, how is the code matrix useful in the visualization process? I think this is also not something that is directly connected to this topic now. So why don't you, Utam, also write me a private message after the session, and I will send you some resources in that topic. Okay, so I think I got through all the questions, and I hope I didn't miss anybody. In case I did, or in case I wasn't replying to every aspects of your question, feel free to reach out to me. I am here all day, and you can just write a private message via this conference platform, and I will be very, very happy to answer any further questions you might have. Other than that, thank you very much for coming. I hope that this session was interesting and you got a good overview of what MAXMaps can do for you and how you can use that to create concept maps. I wish you a lot of fun today, and I hope that you will attend a lot of different interesting sessions and discussions. So thank you very much for coming. It was great seeing you. See you later and take care. Bye bye.